What are the five freedoms of animal welfare, and why are they important for an animal behavior consultant to consider in their practice? Answer: the five freedoms are a set of standards for the welfare of animals designed to ensure that animals' needs are met. They are freedom from hunger and thirst. Animals should have access to fresh water and a diet that promotes health and well-being. Freedom from discomfort. Animals should be provided with an appropriate environment, including shelter and a comfortable resting area. Freedom from pain, injury, or disease. Animals should be prevented from suffering and should have access to veterinary care if necessary. Freedom to express normal behavior. Animals should have sufficient space, company, and facilities to express their natural behaviors. Freedom from fear and distress. Animals should be provided with conditions and treatment that avoid mental suffering. For an animal behavior consultant, these freedoms provide a framework for assessing the well-being of animals and guiding behavior modification programs. Consultants must ensure that interventions do not compromise any of these freedoms and must evaluate the broader context of animal welfare when diagnosing behavioral issues. When assessing an animal's behavior, what role do observation techniques play in understanding the root cause of unwanted behaviors, and how should an animal behavior consultant use these observations effectively? Answer: observation techniques are fundamental in diagnosing the root cause of unwanted behaviors in animals. By carefully observing an animal's actions and responses in different contexts, a consultant can identify patterns, triggers, and potential causes of the behavior. Systematic observation. This involves observing the animal over a period of time in various situations, ensuring consistency and accuracy. The consultant should take detailed notes on the animal's body language, vocalizations, and interactions with people or other animals. Behavioral triggers identification. Consultants should look for environmental, social, or physiological triggers that may provoke a behavioral response. For example, a dog might display aggressive behavior when near a certain object or when a specific person approaches. Differentiating normal versus normal behavior. The consultant should understand what constitutes normal and abnormal behavior for the species in question. For instance, it is normal for a dog to bark, but excessive barking might indicate anxiety or stress. Observation helps to avoid jumping to conclusions or treating symptoms rather than the underlying cause. Consultants should ensure that the observations are done over time and under different conditions to get an accurate picture of the animal's behavior. Mr. Thompson, an animal behavior consultant, is working with a dog that shows severe separation anxiety. During the session, Mr. Thompson notices that the dog has visible wounds on its paws and signs of neglect. What ethical steps should Mr. Thompson take in this situation? Answer: in this scenario, Mr. Thompson faces an ethical dilemma. The dog has not only a behavioral issue, separation anxiety, but also signs of neglect, which must be addressed. The steps he should take include: report the neglect. As per the ethical guidelines for animal welfare, consultants must report any signs of neglect or abuse. This is often mandated by law in many jurisdictions, such as the Animal Welfare Act in the United States, which requires professionals to report suspected cases of abuse or neglect to appropriate authorities. Prioritize animal welfare. Mr. Thompson should immediately focus on the dog's physical needs by recommending veterinary care. The physical injuries should be addressed before any behavior modification takes place, as neglect can exacerbate behavioral issues. Ensure transparency. Mr. Thompson should inform the client, if appropriate, about his concerns regarding the dog's welfare and the need for veterinary intervention. He must also explain that his actions are in line with ethical standards aimed at promoting the animal's overall well-being. Document the findings. Documentation is critical in cases of neglect. Mr. Thompson should keep detailed notes on his observations and any actions he takes in response, ensuring a clear record in case further legal actions or investigations are required. How can an animal behavior consultant differentiate between a medical issue and a behavioral issue when assessing a dog displaying aggressive tendencies? Answer: differentiating between medical and behavioral causes is crucial to providing the appropriate treatment for an animal. Here's how an animal behavior consultant can make this distinction. Medical history review. A thorough review of the dog's medical history is essential. Aggression can sometimes be caused by underlying health issues such as pain, illness, or neurological conditions. Behavioral patterns. Behavioral aggression typically follows a consistent pattern, e.g., triggered by a specific situation or person. In contrast, medically induced aggression may appear more erratic or arise without clear external triggers. Veterinary collaboration. If a medical issue is suspected, the consultant should work with a veterinarian to rule out any physical causes. The vet may perform diagnostic tests, such as blood work or x-rays, to check for underlying health conditions that might be causing the aggression response to treatment. If behavior modification strategies fail to reduce aggression, it could indicate a medical cause. On the other hand, if the aggression improves with physical treatment, G. Pain management or medication, it would suggest a medical issue. What ethical considerations should an animal behavior consultant keep in mind when working with a client who is seeking advice on training their pet for competitive events, such as dog shows or agility trials? Answer: when working with clients in competitive environments, an animal behavior consultant must maintain high ethical standards. Key considerations include animal welfare over performance. The consultant must ensure that the training methods used prioritize the animal's welfare above the desire for performance or competition. This aligns with the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, ensuring that the animal is not subjected to stress, discomfort, or harm in pursuit of competition. Avoiding coercive training methods. The consultant should avoid recommending any harsh or aversive training techniques, e.g., choke collars or shock collars, that could cause physical or psychological harm to the animal. Positive reinforcement methods should be the primary approach. Transparency with the client. The consultant should be clear with clients about the limits of training, especially if the animal is not showing interest or capability for certain competitive activities. Pushing animals beyond their natural capabilities or forcing them to perform in high-stress environments could lead to injury or long-term behavioral issues. Ongoing monitoring. The consultant should emphasize the importance of ongoing monitoring during training and competition to ensure that the animal's well-being is maintained. What are some of the key indicators of stress in animals, and how can these indicators be used to assess an animal's welfare during behavior modification sessions? Answer: stress indicators can be both physiological and behavioral. Recognizing these signs allows the consultant to assess the animal's emotional and physical state and make necessary adjustments to behavior modification strategies. Key indicators include physiological signs. Increased heart rate. Stress often leads to a heightened heart rate. This can be monitored through veterinary equipment or observed through behavioral changes such as heavy panting. Changes in body posture. A stressed animal might exhibit body language such as cowering, tail tucking, or stiffening. These signs indicate discomfort and should be addressed by adjusting the training environment. Behavioral signs. Avoidance behaviors. Animals that are stressed may show avoidance behaviors such as fleeing the area, hiding, or refusing to engage with the consultant or the environment. Aggression or fear-based responses. Stress can trigger fear or aggression. For instance, a dog that suddenly becomes more aggressive or fearful may be reacting to stress in the environment or to the training process itself. Changes in appetite or sleeping patterns. Stressed animals may eat less or more than usual, or exhibit disrupted sleep. These physiological changes should not be overlooked as they are often clear signs of emotional distress. By monitoring these indicators, the consultant can adjust the behavior modification plan to better suit the animal's needs, ensuring a more positive and effective outcome. How can standardized questionnaires and scales help an animal behavior consultant assess an animal's behavioral issues more objectively? Answer: standardized questionnaires and scales play a critical role in providing a consistent, evidence-based approach to behavior assessment. These tools help consultants gather objective data on the animal's behavior, which can be essential for accurate diagnosis and treatment. Key benefits include consistency across assessments. Standardized questionnaires ensure that every animal is assessed using the same criteria, leading to more reliable results over time. This consistency is essential for comparing progress and making informed decisions about treatment. Identifying behavioral patterns. Scales and questionnaires allow consultants to gather detailed information about an animal's behavior, including frequency, intensity, and context. This can help identify patterns or triggers that might not be immediately obvious during direct observation. Client communication. These tools also serve as a way to communicate findings to clients, providing them with clear, measurable data on their animal's behavior. This can help build trust and align expectations regarding treatment outcomes. Objective measurement. These tools minimize the risk of bias, ensuring that the consultant's observations are supplemented with quantifiable data. This objectivity enhances the accuracy and effectiveness of the behavior modification plan. How can the concept of habituation be used to address fear-based behaviors in animals? Answer: habituation is a process by which an animal gradually becomes less sensitive to a stimulus through repeated exposure without the occurrence of negative outcomes. It is a powerful tool for addressing fear-based behaviors, especially when used correctly in behavior modification. Here's how. Gradual exposure. The consultant can use gradual exposure to the feared stimulus in a controlled and safe manner. This process involves introducing the stimulus at a low intensity and gradually increasing the intensity as the animal becomes more comfortable. Positive reinforcement. During the exposure process, the consultant should use positive reinforcement, such as treats or praise, to reward the animal for calm behavior. This helps the animal associate the previously fear-inducing stimulus with positive experiences. Avoiding overwhelming the animal. It is crucial to avoid overwhelming the animal during habituation. The exposure should be slow and progressive, ensuring that the animal never experiences a level of intensity that would reinforce the fear. By applying habituation, consultants can help animals overcome fear-based behaviors in a safe and ethical manner, ensuring their welfare throughout the process. What are the main ethical concerns when working with animals that are victims of hoarding, and how should an animal behavior consultant address these concerns? Answer: when working with animals from hoarding situations, ethical considerations are paramount, as these animals may have endured prolonged neglect, lack of socialization, and severe behavioral issues. Key concerns include addressing immediate welfare needs. The first priority is ensuring that the animal's immediate welfare needs are met, including medical care, food, and appropriate living conditions. Hoarded animals often suffer from malnutrition, parasites, and untreated injuries, which must be addressed before any behavior modification can take place, minimizing stress during intervention. These animals may already be traumatized and overly stressed. It is essential to use gentle, low-stress techniques to prevent further harm and to build trust slowly. Long-term behavioral rehabilitation. Hoarded animals often have socialization and behavioral issues due to lack of proper care and interaction. Consultants must develop a gradual, compassionate behavior modification plan that focuses on rebuilding trust, teaching appropriate behaviors, and addressing anxiety or fear-based responses. What are the key components of a behavior modification plan for a dog displaying aggression towards other dogs, and how can an animal behavior consultant ensure the plan is both effective and humane? Answer: a behavior modification plan for a dog displaying aggression towards other dogs should include several key components to ensure effectiveness while maintaining humane practices. The plan should be tailored to the individual dog's temperament, triggers, and environment. The steps include assessment and observation. The consultant should begin by conducting a thorough behavioral assessment to identify the triggers of aggression, such as specific dog situations or stressors. Desensitization and counter-conditioning. Gradual desensitization involves exposing the dog to the presence of other dogs at a safe distance where the dog does not feel threatened. Over time, the distance can be reduced while using positive reinforcement, e.g., treats, praise for calm behavior. Counter-conditioning pairs the sight of other dogs with pleasant experiences, e.g., treats or toys, to shift the dog's emotional response from negative to positive. Teaching alternative behaviors. The consultant should teach the dog alternative, non-aggressive responses, such as focusing on the handler, sitting, or walking calmly when encountering other dogs. Avoiding punitive methods. It is critical to avoid using aversive or punitive methods, e.g., shock collars, physical corrections, as these can escalate fear or aggression. Aversive methods can harm the relationship between the dog and the consultant or owner, leading to increased stress and worsening the behavior. Managing the environment. During the behavior modification process, environmental management is crucial. This may involve keeping the dog away from high-stress situations, e.g., crowded dog parks, until it is ready to handle those interactions. Training should take place in calm, controlled environments to promote positive outcomes. Collaboration with veterinarians. If the aggression is suspected to be linked to medical issues such as pain or hormonal imbalances, the consultant should work with a veterinarian to rule out underlying health conditions before proceeding with behavior modification. Progress evaluation and adjustment. The plan should be flexible and adjusted as necessary based on the dog's progress. Regular evaluations will help ensure that the dog's emotional state and well-being are being respected throughout the modification process. What is cognitive bias in animals, and how does it affect their decision-making in natural environments? Provide examples and explain experimental methods used to measure cognitive biases in animals. Answer: cognitive bias refers to the systematic patterns in which animals make decisions or judgments that deviate from rationality, often influenced by previous experiences, emotions, or environmental context. For example, optimistic bias may lead an animal to overestimate rewards in uncertain situations, while pessimistic bias might cause them to assume negative outcomes. These biases are significant because they can influence behaviors like foraging, mating, or risk-taking. Experimental approaches. The measurement of cognitive biases often involves presenting animals with ambiguous stimuli and observing their reactions. A common method is the judgment bias task, where animals are trained to associate one stimulus, e.g., a light, with a positive outcome, e.g., food, and another stimulus with a negative outcome, e.g., no food. The animal's response to an ambiguous stimulus placed between the two known stimuli is then observed. If the animal responds more like the positive trained stimulus, it is considered to have an optimistic bias. The results can help researchers understand how emotions such as stress or fear influence cognitive processing and behavior in different species. How do short-term and long-term memory differ in animals, and what research methods are used to study memory recall in non-human species? Answer. Short-term memory (STM) in animals refers to the temporary storage of information for a brief period, usually seconds to minutes, while long-term memory (ATM) involves the retention of information over extended periods, ranging from hours to a lifetime. For example, in rats, STM is often measured by the ability to navigate a maze shortly after being introduced to it, while LTM is assessed by whether they can remember the maze after longer interval. Research methods. Delayed matching to sample task. This task is commonly used to study memory in primates and birds. The animal is shown a sample stimulus e.g. a specific shape, and after delay must choose a matching stimulus from an array. The length of the delay tests the strength of the animal's short-term and long-term memory. Conditioned taste aversion (CTA). In CTA experiments, animals, such as rodents, are given a novel food followed by an unpleasant experience, and their ability to recall the aversion over time is studied. The formation of LTM is indicated if the animal avoids the food even after days or weeks have passed. Discuss how tool use in animals, such as primates or birds, demonstrates cognitive problem-solving abilities. What does the ability to use tools suggest about the animal's cognitive processes, and how is this studied in the field? Answer. Tool use is a clear indication of advanced cognitive abilities, as it requires problem-solving, planning, and sometimes even the understanding of cause and effect relationships. For example, New Caledonian crows have been observed using sticks to extract insects from tree bark, while chimpanzees use stones to crack nuts. These behaviors suggest that the animals are not simply acting on instinct, but are capable of manipulating their environment in complex ways. Cognitive implications. Tool use indicates the ability to form mental representations of objects and events in the environment and to devise strategies for using tools effectively. It may also involve planning and foresight, such as using a tool to obtain a future goal, e.g., food. These behaviors suggest that animals may possess theory of mind, the ability to understand others' perspectives, and may be capable of cultural transmission, passing down knowledge about tool use. Studying tool use. Ethologists observe tool use in natural settings and conduct controlled experiments in laboratories. One example is the use of puzzle boxes in primates, where the animal must use a tool to access food. Mr. Adams is conducting a behavioral study on how domestic dogs react to the presence of strangers in their home. He uses a controlled experiment where one group of dogs is exposed to a stranger in their home environment while another group is not. What ethical considerations should Mr. Adams be aware of in conducting this experiment, and how can he ensure the welfare of the animals involved? Answer. Mr. Adams must follow ethical guidelines for the treatment of animals in research, such as those outlined by the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee (IACUC). These guidelines emphasize the importance of minimizing stress and harm to animals while ensuring that the research provides significant scientific value. Ethical considerations. Animal welfare. Mr. Adams must ensure that the dogs are not subjected to unnecessary stress or harm. This includes providing a familiar environment, monitoring for signs of anxiety, and ensuring that the stranger's presence does not cause undue fear or aggression. Informed consent and minimizing harm. If the dogs are part of an ongoing behavioral therapy program, informed consent or equivalent procedures for animals is necessary. Mr. Adams must take steps to reduce any potential negative consequences, such as trauma or distress, that may arise from the presence of a stranger. Environmental enrichment. While the dogs are part of the experiment, Mr. Adams should ensure that they are not deprived of necessary stimuli, e.g., exercise, interaction, and that they are housed in a safe, comfortable environment. What is an ethogram, and how does time sampling contribute to data collection in animal behavior studies? Explain how these tools can be used together in research on animal cognition. Answer. An ethogram is a catalogue of behaviors used in the study of animal behavior, essentially a list of observable behaviors with clear definitions. It serves as a foundational tool for systematic observation in behavioral research. Time sampling. Time sampling is a technique used in data collection where observations of an animal's behavior are made at predetermined intervals, typically in short, discrete periods. The two common types of time sampling are instantaneous sampling. Observers record the behavior of an animal at fixed time intervals, e.g. every 30 seconds. 1-0 sampling. Observers note whether a specific behavior occurs during a designated time period, e.g. 10 minutes. By combining an ethogram with time sampling methods, researchers can systematically collect data on various behaviors and analyze how those behaviors are linked to cognitive processes. For example, a study on problem solving in crows could involve observing the frequency of tool use behaviors at regular intervals. Explain the concepts of frequency, duration, and latency in behavioral analysis and discuss how these metrics are applied in the study of animal cognition. Answer: frequency refers to the number of times a particular behavior occurs within a given time period. It's used to assess how often an animal performs a specific action, such as a bird calling or a primate using a tool. Duration refers to the length of time that a behavior occurs. For example, how long a dog remains in a sitting position after being instructed, or the duration of a crow's problem-solving task. Latency measures the amount of time between the presentation of a stimulus and the initiation of the behavior. For instance, the latency between the appearance of a food cue and the dog's response to fetch the food. Application in animal cognition. These metrics help researchers assess the efficiency and cognitive flexibility of animals in completing tasks. For example, measuring the latency of a crow in using a tool to obtain food provides insight into the animal's problem-solving speed, which can be linked to its cognitive processing abilities. How can researchers in animal behavior communicate their findings effectively, and why is it important to apply peer-reviewed studies in practice? Answer: effective scientific communication involves presenting research in a clear, concise, and accurate manner, ensuring that findings are accessible to both the scientific community and the general public. This can be achieved through publishing research in peer-reviewed journals, presenting at conferences, or engaging in educational outreach. The importance of peer-reviewed studies lies in the fact that they undergo rigorous evaluation by experts in the field, ensuring that the methodology, data analysis, and conclusions are valid and reliable. Applying peer-reviewed research in practice helps ensure that behavioral interventions or recommendations for working with animals are based on sound scientific evidence, minimizing risks to animal welfare and enhancing the effectiveness of behavioral strategies. How do habituation and sensitization differ as forms of non-associative learning in animals, and what are their implications for animal behavior research? Answer: habituation is the process by which an animal decreases its response to a repeated, non-threatening stimulus over time. This form of learning helps animals conserve energy and attention by ignoring irrelevant stimuli. For example, a bird might initially fly away when it hears a car horn, but will eventually ignore it if the sound is non-threatening and occurs frequently. Sensitization occurs when an animal's response to a stimulus becomes stronger after repeated exposure, often due to the stimulus being aversive or intense. For instance, a dog might become more reactive to loud noises if it has experienced a traumatic event linked to noise. Both processes are vital in understanding animal behavior, as they show how animals adapt to their environment based on experiences, influencing how they process stimuli and respond to changes in their surroundings. What evidence exists for theory of mind and self-awareness in animals, and how are these concepts tested using behavioral experiments? Answer: theory of mind, Tom, refers to the ability to understand that others have thoughts, intentions, and perspectives that may differ from one's own. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize oneself as an individual distinct from others. Evidence: mirror recognition test. Primates, elephants, and dolphins have shown evidence of self-awareness in mirror tests, where they are marked with a visible mark and then presented with a mirror. If the animal inspects or removes the mark, it suggests self-recognition, an indicator of self-awareness. Theory of mind. In some primates, such as chimpanzees, there is evidence that they can understand what others see or know. For example, they may hide food from others who are watching, but not from those who are unaware of the location, indicating an understanding of others' perspectives. Compare observational studies and controlled experiments in animal behavior research. What are the advantages and limitations of each method in studying animal cognition? Answer: observational studies involve watching animals in their natural environment without intervening. They provide a wealth of ecological data and allow researchers to see behaviors in real-world contexts. However, they can be limited by the inability to control for external variables, making it difficult to establish causality. Controlled experiments involve manipulating one or more variables to observe their effect on behavior in a controlled setting. This method allows for greater control over confounding factors, making it easier to draw causal conclusions. However, the artificial setting can sometimes fail to replicate real-world conditions, potentially limiting the generalizability of the results. Both methods have unique strengths and limitations, and the best approach depends on the research question being studied. Combining both approaches often leads to more robust and comprehensive findings. What are the key elements of animal welfare laws that an animal behavior consultant must understand and adhere to when working with clients in different jurisdictions? Answer: animal welfare laws are designed to ensure the humane treatment of animals and can vary significantly between local, national, and international jurisdictions. As an animal behavior consultant, it's crucial to be aware of the following: legal definitions of animal abuse and neglect. Animal behavior consultants must understand what constitutes abuse or neglect. Abuse typically refers to actions that cause harm or suffering to an animal, while neglect involves the failure to provide basic needs such as food, water, shelter, or veterinary care. National and local laws. Consultants must familiarize themselves with specific regulations that govern the treatment of animals in the areas where they work. For example, the Animal Welfare Act in the United States mandates certain standards for animal housing and care in professional settings. International standards. In some cases, consultants may need to comply with international treaties such as the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora CITES, which regulates trade in endangered species to prevent overexploitation, cruelty, and enforcement. In most jurisdictions, there are specific agencies responsible for enforcing animal welfare laws, e.g., either SPCA in the UK or ASPCA in the US. What ethical guidelines should an animal behavior consultant follow when dealing with client-animal disputes? Answer: ethical guidelines are paramount in ensuring the professional integrity of an animal behavior consultant. Key ethical considerations when managing client-animal disputes include confidentiality. Consultants must uphold the confidentiality of their clients, both human and animal, and any sensitive information shared during consultations. This is typically governed by professional ethical codes and legal regulations. Avoiding harm. Consultants must strive to ensure their recommendations do not cause harm to the animal. If a behavior problem involves serious aggression or behavioral issues that may lead to harm, the consultant must advise on the safest course of action while maintaining ethical standards. Conflict resolution. If a dispute arises where a client insists on certain methods that may be harmful or unethical, e.g., using punishment-based training tools, the consultant should stand firm on ethical guidelines, possibly refusing service unless the client agrees to humane and scientifically supported methods. Informed consent. It's critical for consultants to explain their approach to clients, including potential risks, benefits, and alternatives, ensuring clients make informed decisions. MS Johnson is an animal behavior consultant working with a dog who has severe separation anxiety. The dog is destructive when left alone, but MS Johnson's client insists on using shock collars to correct the behavior. What should MS Johnson do in this situation? Answer: in this scenario, MS Johnson faces an ethical dilemma. She must adhere to her professional ethical guidelines and the principles of humane animal training, which prohibit using aversive tools like shock collars that can cause psychological and physical harm to the animal. Consulting ethical codes. Many professional organizations, such as the International Association of Animal Behavior Consultants (IAOC), provide ethical guidelines against using punitive methods. These codes emphasize positive reinforcement techniques. Educating the client. MS Johnson should calmly explain the potential harm caused by shock collars and present scientifically supported humane alternatives, such as counter-conditioning and desensitization strategies. She could also refer to local regulations that may restrict or prohibit certain training tools, particularly shock collars. Informed consent and collaboration. If the client insists on using shock collars despite the consultant's advice, MS Johnson must evaluate her options, potentially referring the client to another consultant or declining to continue the service if it compromises the animal's welfare. How should an animal behavior consultant address potential conflicts of interest, especially when working with multiple clients with similar needs? Answer: conflicts of interest can arise in various scenarios, particularly when a consultant is working with multiple clients who may have similar issues or concerns. To avoid these conflicts, a consultant should establish clear boundaries. Consultants should clearly define the scope of their services and communicate potential conflicts to clients upfront. If a conflict of interest is identified, e.g., advising on similar training techniques for competing businesses, it should be disclosed immediately. Neutral advice. Consultants must provide impartial advice that focuses solely on the well-being of the animal without any personal, financial, or professional bias influencing their recommendations. Documentation and transparency. It's essential to maintain transparent records that outline the consulting process, decisions made, and communications with clients, ensuring that all actions are traceable and justifiable in case of a dispute. Ethical guidelines, such as those provided by the Animal Behavior Society, can offer further support in maintaining objectivity and professionalism. What are the primary legal responsibilities of an animal behavior consultant when it comes to record keeping and protecting client confidentiality? Answer: an animal behavior consultant must comply with laws and regulations governing confidentiality and record keeping. Confidentiality laws. Many regions have specific privacy laws that require consultants to keep personal and sensitive information about clients, both human and animal, confidential. This is commonly outlined in regulations such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act (HIPAA) for human-related issues, or local privacy laws specific to the practice of animal consulting. Record-keeping regulations. Consultants must ensure all records are accurate, complete, and stored securely. This includes maintaining a history of client consultations, animal assessments, treatment plans, and any communications. Records should be kept for a period specified by the relevant professional body or local regulations, usually a few years after the last consultation. Client rights to access records. Clients generally have the right to access their own records, and the consultant must provide a clear process for this access while protecting confidential information related to the animal's well-being and any third-party involvement. What safety regulations must an animal behavior consultant follow when conducting in-home consultations with potentially aggressive animals? Answer: safety is a key concern when working with animals, especially those with behavioral issues that may pose risks to human safety. Consultants must adhere to safety regulations such as risk assessment. Before any in-home consultation, a thorough risk assessment should be conducted. This includes evaluating the animal's history, behavior triggers, and any potential hazards in the environment. Personal protective equipment (PPE). Depending on the situation, consultants may need to use safety equipment, such as bite-resistant clothing or gloves when handling aggressive animals. Consulting with veterinarians. For animals with severe aggression issues, consultants should collaborate with veterinarians to rule out any medical causes and ensure that the behavior is not a result of pain or health problems. Emergency procedures. Consultants should have emergency procedures in place, including a clear plan for removing themselves or others from dangerous situations. They should also be familiar with local liability insurance policies and legal protections available in case of injury. What should an animal behavior consultant do if they believe that a client's requested behavior modification could harm the animal? Answer: if a consultant believes that a proposed behavior modification could harm an animal, they must refuse to implement harmful techniques. The consultant must prioritize the welfare of the animal and refuse to carry out any techniques that could cause harm, whether physical or emotional. Consult with experts. If the proposed modification involves advanced techniques that the consultant is unsure about, they should seek guidance from specialists in animal behavior, veterinarians, or legal experts. Educate the client. The consultant should explain why the proposed method is harmful and provide evidence-based, ethical alternatives. Document the situation. It is essential for the consultant to document the discussion, the client's request, and the reasons for refusing to proceed. If necessary, the consultant can refer the client to another professional with the appropriate expertise. Mr. Smith has a cat that exhibits frequent biting during training sessions. He insists that the cat be punished to stop the behavior. What should you, as an animal behavior consultant, advise Mr. Smith? Answer: as an animal behavior consultant, you should explain the harm of punishment-based techniques. Explain to Mr. Smith that punishment-based methods, e.g., physical correction or yelling, can exacerbate the biting behavior and lead to fear, aggression, and distrust in humans. Recommend positive reinforcement instead of punishment. Suggest using positive reinforcement to reward desired behaviors, such as offering treats or praise when the cat refrains from biting. Address the root cause. Work with Mr. Smith to identify the underlying cause of the biting, e.g., fear, overstimulation, and develop a behavior modification plan based on this information. What steps should an animal behavior consultant take to ensure compliance with safety regulations during training with dogs in group settings? Answer: during group training sessions, consultants must adhere to safety protocols to protect all animals and participants. This includes pre-assessment. Ensure that all dogs are temperament tested before participating in group sessions to prevent aggressive or disruptive behavior. The size of the group. Limit the number of dogs in each group to avoid overcrowding, which can increase stress levels and lead to behavioral issues. Supervision. Ensure that every dog is under constant supervision to prevent fights or accidents. Emergency protocols. Have an emergency protocol in place for dealing with situations where a dog becomes overly aggressive or injured. Why is continuing education important for an animal behavior consultant, and what are some ways to stay updated on the latest research and techniques? Answer: continuing education is critical for ensuring that an animal behavior consultant remains up to date with the latest scientific research and advancements in behavior modification techniques. Consultants should attend conferences and workshops. These events offer opportunities to learn from experts in the field and gain hands-on experience with new techniques. Collaborate with experts. Building a network with veterinarians, other consultants, and trainers helps consultants stay informed about best practices and emerging research. Stay informed through journals. Reading peer-reviewed journals, books, and articles can provide a wealth of knowledge on the latest trends, techniques, and research findings in animal behavior science. Regular professional development ensures that consultants provide the best care for animals while maintaining their professional standards.